this before, but today we're going to have this. And we have invited to these discussants. Professor Lina Shahade from the University of Miami Miller School of Medicine, Division of Cardiology, and Interdisciplinary Stem Cell Institute. Excuse me. Professor Shahade runs a basic science and translational cardiovascular research laboratory that has been funded continuously for over a decade by the NIH, the American Heart Institute, and the Miami Heart Research Institute. For the past 6 years, she has also been the director of the Cardiovascular Systems Educational Module for first-year MD and MD and PH students at the University of Miami Miller School of Medicine, where she has introduced unique organization and innovation in blended learning techniques. Welcome, and thank you for coming being with us.
Thank you so much, Renee. I appreciate the introduction, and I appreciate the organizers of this event for inviting me. It's an honor to be here.
So we're going to start today with a question. And by the way, the screen is flickering. There's something wrong with the PowerPoint, so that's going to happen throughout. I apologize in advance. It's just the PowerPoint. The movie will play fine. So our discussion this afternoon, as I said, focuses on the impact of artificial intelligence on medicine, healthcare, and medical education. So to start off with, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you entered the medical field, and what led you to specialize in cardiovascular research?
All right, so what led me to the medical field? I guess I have to go back in time. I grew up in Dubai. I went to an advanced private school there that is strong in sciences, and it was an American curriculum-based school, and this is where really I figured out I have a passion for science, for biology, for chemistry. And I had no doubt in my mind that's what I want to pursue. I was so intrigued by genetics, the idea of, and back then we did not have, by the way, like the advanced molecular biology that we have nowadays. Just the idea of the genes, the genome being a code that can be translated and read into instructions that can deliver and make something like a beautiful flower or complicated human beings. Like, I was just so fascinated by that. I knew I wanted to pursue that. I wanted to see the effect of the genes that code, if you will, which is a word we'll hear a lot about in AI, right? So the code and how that can influence health and disease. That's where I knew I wanted to be a scientist and I wanted to have an impact. So I came to the United States to pursue my degrees. I had all my degrees in Florida Atlantic University, bachelor's in microbiology, master's in teaching sciences, and a PhD in complex systems and brain sciences, where there again, it was all about computational biology and trying to find patterns in data. And again, the word patterns will appear a lot nowadays when we talk about AI. So my mentor then, Dr. Larry Leibovich, is a mathematician, and my goal was, the thesis was to understand the networks of gene expression data or any other biological data. So that happened, and I graduated, and I felt like, okay, great, I got all of those tools that I wanted to learn, but what is the impact? What is the impact on health and disease? So this is when I went to University of Miami Miller School of Medicine and decided to work with physicians and run a lab and do experiments on mice. And this is where the impact and the involvement in the medical field started. And then the other question was medical education. Okay, so yeah.
What led you to specialize in cardiovascular?
Oh, cardiovascular. Yeah. So when I went to University of Miami, I started training in a lab of molecular cardiology. This cardiologist then had mouse models of heart failure, and she had this gene expression data that she did not know. She needed someone to help her understand that data. And there I was, computational background person. They gave me all of that data, and I figured out some pathways and mechanisms of action, and I fell in love with this field and decided, like, I want to run a wet lab. I want to combine the computational biology with the wet lab to have impact.
So, we're going to start our conversation. I'm going to watch a short video from a documentary by Time Management that discusses the benefits of physicians using AI technology to detect illnesses.
At Mass General Brigham, doctors have about 50 such algorithms to help them with patient care. About half have been approved by the FDA, and the remaining ones are still being tested.
There are certain conditions that if you don't treat quickly, the patient worsens or could actually pass away. And so examples of that would be like pulmonary embolism. In the ER setting, a patient comes in with shortness of breath. That could be one of the things they have, but it might not be the thing that they have. Could have congestive heart failure, which gets treated differently. So now there are algorithms that can detect pulmonary embolisms on a CAT scan of the chest. And so when that gets detected, it doesn't make the diagnosis. It's important to note that it's not saying this is definitely what it is. It's saying that the probability of this patient having it is much higher than this patient. And so you should look at this patient first. And when you have a series of patients that you need to care for, it does help to get that bump up in the list to be able to say, I should look here first, because there's a higher likelihood that this patient has that and needs the treatment.
All right, so I'm going to hand over the little clicker to you. Just remember to press it, point it that way as you go through your slides, because my next question is, your current research has produced fascinating results regarding the reflections and reactions of medical students at the UM Miller School of Medicine on artificial intelligence technology's ability to determine patient diagnoses. So, in other words, how artificial intelligence has helped doctors improve their diagnoses on patients, right? Could you elaborate on this research and some of the findings you have discovered?
Sure. So this is an example, give you a flavor of where we can apply artificial intelligence on biomedical research in a lab like mine. So this is a paper we published last year in PNAS, where we used artificial intelligence to predict pulmonary function and pathology of the lung in mice after SARS infection. So what I'm showing here is, we infect the mice with a virus that is called the recombinant SARS, so that it's not as infectious as the real SARS, and we have to first show that it causes a similar pathology like the real SARS, and this is where we're comparing now the effect of the real SARS virus with the recombinant virus, and the mice lose similar amount of body weight. And on the bottom here is the histology of the lungs, of the real SARS and our recombinant SARS. And what you see in green here in a section of the lung, so this is like the mouse dissected, you take the lung out and you do the staining, and what you see in green, so go back. Yeah, what you see in green on the left is the real virus in the mouse lung, and on the right is the recombinant virus in the mouse lung. And you can see there's a similar infection level 2 days after infection. And it's quite scary, right? You see the virus like invading the entire lung like that. So now we look at the pathology of the lung, and we stain the lungs with something called H&E to look at the histology and details of the lungs, and this is when we also consult with pathologists to make sure we have the right description of the lungs. And the point here I'm trying to make is that this is a lot of intricate details that you can only do when, in humans, for example, when you get a biopsy of the young. So it's very invasive. You go in, you get a biopsy, you take it out, you stain it, you look at it under the microscope with a pathologist, and you see things like these called perivascular infiltration, lymphocytic infiltration, that spills to the lumen, type 2 pneumocystis, and et cetera, and et cetera. So again, very invasive technique to get to the pathology of the lung. And again, because we can access the tissue, we can also do RNA sequencing and know what kinds of gene programs are activated. And these are examples of pathways that are activated when we access the tissue from the animals or the humans. So, but this is very invasive. How about with non-invasive techniques that we can use? So here on the right, you see a patient in this chamber called whole body plethysmography, and what we do in my lab, we put the mice in these chambers. And based on the oxygen and carbon dioxide levels, you can get a lot of parameters, functional parameters of the lung, how these mice are breathing and inspiration, expiration, the pause, the strength of the breath, so many details. So what we can do now with machine learning is, can we write an algorithm where we give the non-invasive measures, like the breathing, all of these measures like on the left, and have the algorithm predict what is happening at the cellular level in the lungs. And this is the experiment that we did, and indeed,
over the next 20 years, we're going to see profound.
And indeed, we found that when we write this program using machine learning, and we feed it the breathing functional parameters and the histology parameters, and train the program, and then in the next cycle you just give it the breathing parameters, it can accurately predict the histopathology of the lungs. And this is an example of just 2 data sets that can give you information about at the cellular level. Imagine now all the other information that can be used to make those algorithms more accurate, like the genetics and the imaging. And so the beauty of this is that you use the AI to predict things that before you would have to go do invasively.
And so we're going to watch another clip. To the next slide, and this is a short clip, this time from Big Think, featuring an interview with Stanford professor Steve Quake on how AI language models are being used in research.
Over the next 20 years, we're going to see profound changes in how we do science. Many of the things that are expensive and difficult experiments to do now will be done in silico by computers using the insights we're gaining from artificial intelligence and machine learning. These AI tools will predict what a single mutation does to cells across the body, what diseases you're potentially going to get, and what will happen as we start expressing different genes in an artificial way in cells to try to reprogram them for new functions. You can imagine many applications of engineered cells in medicine. Cells will explore the body, discover tumors in their earliest stages before they can be detected by conventional radiology. Cells that might explore across the blood-brain barrier and discover the plaques that cause neurodegenerative disease, and also start to digest those. The applications of these insights will lead to earlier interventions, earlier therapies, and it's going to be a revolution in medicine.
With AI being relatively new, there are many debates and concerns about its advancement, especially when it comes to the patient side and when it comes to incorporating this technology into our healthcare, right? What would you like people to know that may not be well recognized, especially regarding the early detection, using AI for the early detection of health problems? And could you also discuss the potential role AI could play in helping us live healthier and longer lives?
Right. I think all of those questions are going to be answered by the video we're going to all watch, which is great. But I also answer you. I think I'll touch also on a study that we did to address some of those questions. There's a lot of unknowns and a lot of uncertainties and a lot of anxiety about AI, right? So students may be anxious. We thought they may be anxious. This study shows they're not that anxious. I'll go through the data. Faculty can be anxious. Patients may be anxious. There are a lot of unknowns, a lot of issues that can hinder the excitement about AI. However, it's happening. The benefits way outweigh the risks. There are a lot of regulations that are needed. I mean, this all can, needs hours and hours of
I'll use
answering,
this
but
guy.
I'll give you a snapshot of a study that we did with the first-year medical students to learn about their perceptions about AI. And because we're talking about, we have to change the curricula, we have to include computational biology and coding and machine learning and early on, because it's happening and we need to know, the students need to know how it's working. And the changes are happening faster than we're catching up with changing our curricula. So anyway, we decided to do a study with the first year medical students to learn about their perceptions about artificial intelligence. And we made them, it was a voluntary study. We had 73 out of 202 students volunteer. And what they did is they used this AI platform called Glass AI. It's based on ChatGPT-4, and combining that with evidence-based clinical guidelines made by a team of physicians. So students, usually we give them a case of a patient and we ask them to solve the case and explain why they came up with a diagnosis. Again, these are early first-year medical students. And that's how they usually solve cases in teams called UMCLs in our school. So this technology, they take the case, they type it in there, and in seconds, the diagnosis is out and explaining why that diagnosis was selected. So everyone was fascinated by this, and including us, in the speed by which this is done. And so we designed the study around a questionnaire to investigate three main themes. One is students' immediate experience with Glass AI, the potential of this AI utilization in medical education, and the students' deliberations of AI-assisted diagnostic systems in the future healthcare environment. It was a good pool, like I said, 73 students, and we used the Likert scale with the answers agree, strongly agree, disagree, or strongly disagree. And we also had a written part where the students can express their opinions. And the results were as follows. So the majority of the students' perception, they were positive about this technology, and of course they had their own some reservations. So there was, for example, a 96% agreement that this tool augmented their confidence in the diagnosis, right? So they're still trying to solve it on their own, but the tool can help them be confident about their choices. The tool, like 57% thought the tool helped them with the basic physiology concept. So the tool does not do a very good job in explaining the basic physiology, the foundational sciences. So there's room to improve it there. Because again, the cases are based on previous data rather than, and cases rather than concept maps like we would like them to think. And another major point here, like in the bottom, 68% thought AI-assisted diagnostic tools can potentially pose risk to physician workforce. So,
And does that mean that they're worried that it could replace?
right, yes, and they spelled that out. They said in their written comments that that's one of the issues they feared about was a job replacement. But it wasn't as big as we thought. So here in this pie chart representing one of the questions they answered, so this was the written response to the following question. Look into the future and provide your perspective. Do you believe the healthcare system could be changed due to the advancement of AI-assisted diagnostic tools? And you can see that the majority here thought, not the majority, 30% thought AI would reduce error, increase diagnosis confidence, increase efficiency if supervised by physicians. So there was that fear that you still need the supervision. Again, these are first-year medical students, and you have this tool telling them this is the diagnosis. You want supervision by someone telling you, yes, this is correct. That's how they felt. The 25% thought it would improve patient care. They like it as a supplementary role, not a replacement. And there was concern about physician workforce, like you asked Renee here on the left, and concern about the humanistic interactions as expected, right? So we still want, patients and doctors to see each other. And major concerns were the over reliance. They don't want physicians to over rely on those tools. Patient privacy is a big issue always. System bias, liability. There's a lot of ambiguity about legal issues. Who's responsible if a mistake happens, right? Is it the AI or the doctor or the supervisor? So mistakes can easily happen, but who's responsible? So that's a big issue that was raised, and compassion and sympathy and bias in terms of access. People from unprivileged communities may not have access to AI tools like other patients. Yeah.
And excuse me, when you say ethical concerns, can you give me an example of what one of those would be?
Yeah, like ethical concerns, mainly privacy, right? Because you're putting the case of the patient in this box, and who saves the data? I'm sure the company who made this would like that as another case, for example. And does it disappear after? Is it there on the cloud somewhere?
This is your last one?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So we're going to watch the film now. It's an hour long, and it focuses specifically into the issues we've been discussing, and then we'll hang out for a Q&A with the doctor in case you have any follow-up questions for maybe Dr. Wu.
You're very welcome.
We'll see you in a minute.
So now I'll film. She took a picture of my card.
The girl,
Yeah.
the woman. Okay. Just a second. Kind of a mishmash.